So welcome to chapter 4, where now we're going to take a closer look at decimals. So over to the right of the decimal point, we have the first number there is in the 10th position. The second number there would be in the hundredths position. Remember those THSs. The third would be in the thousandths and so on. Thousandths. And what those numbers to the right of the decimal really mean is parts of a whole. So for example, if you have 0.2, you would say that, so here's our 0.2, you would say that as 2/10. So you could write it as a fraction like this, 2/10 really means 2/10 or 0.2. And so that represents a piece of something, a piece of a whole. Let's pretend we have, let's say this is a pie. And so we're going to divide it into 10 equal pieces. And you'll have to imagine with me that these are perfectly equal. Let's see how I can do here. Okay, so now assuming these were equal pieces of this one pie, did I say pie or pizza? Let's say pie. This one pie, we're taking 2 out of 10 of those pieces. So this would be 0.2 or 2/10 of a pie. Okay, next one then, if we have 27 over 100, that's just another way to write this number here, 0.27, or the correct way to say it would be 27 hundredths. Okay, so in other words, you have 100 of something. Let's say you divided a pizza into 100 pieces. Now you have 27 of those pieces. So if we have 6 over 10 then, that is equal to 0.6 or 6/10. We would read this as 6/10. Okay, 36 over 100 is the same thing as 36 hundredths right here, 0.36. And 366 over 1000 would be the same as 0.366 or 366 thousandths. So let's use place value to do some of these following questions. So we have 5 3/10, and we want to write that now in decimal form. So right now we would call this a mixed number. There's a number here, like just a whole number plus a fraction. So we have 5 pizzas plus we have another 3/10 of a pizza. And we want to write that as a decimal. Well, we still have 5, so the 5 is going to stay out on the left of the decimal point because we have 5 whole pizzas. And then we're going to have 0.3. So this is how you would write 5 3/10 as a decimal. All right, next one. So we're looking for the place value of this 5 right here. Okay, and so the 3 is going to be in the 10th position. That 4 is in the hundredths. That 5 then is in the thousandths position. All right, this next one. So we want to write this number here in words. So the correct way to write that in words is 2 and 58 hundredths. So the 8 ends in the hundredths position. So we write 58 hundredths. Now, as a shortcut, lots of people, including me, will read this as 2.58. But that is not actually the correct word name for this number. Okay, so if you were asked on a test for the word name of this number, it is not 2.58, it is 2 and 58 hundredths. That's the correct way to say it. All right, let's take a look at these next ones. So they say write as a fraction or a mixed number. And remember, a mixed number is really just a whole number plus a fraction. So if we've got 0.527 there, I've already done it, right? If we were going to write or say that as a correct word, we would say 527 thousandths. Well, that would be 527 over 1000, because that number, the 7, ends in the thousandths position. All right, this next one then, well, we have 5 whole somethings, right? 5 whole pizzas. And then we also have 800ths. So we would write this as 5 and 800ths. Okay, and so then that is a mixed number. Now, you can leave it in that form for this first couple chapters, but just to give you kind of a glimpse into where we're going next, this 8 over 100, both of these numbers are divisible by 2. So I could divide them both by 2. I'm allowed to do that because the fraction I'll end up with is going to be equivalent. It's going to mean the same thing. So I could actually rewrite this as 5 and 4 over 50. And now look, I can divide both of those by 2 again. So let's divide those by 2 again. And that gives me 5 and 2 over 25. So maybe I'll just say or 5 and 2 over 25. But for your first test, this first answer will also work. All right. Let's say you were asked to compare sizes of 2 decimals. So we have 67 hundredths here, or we have 678 thousandths. So we want to know which one of those 2 is bigger. The trick here is it's way easier to do if we both compare them with the same place value. So 0.67 or 67 hundredths can be written as 0.670. It's 670 thousandths. We're allowed to add a 0 on the end because we're adding 0 to our number. We're adding 0 more thousandths to this number. So if you do that, if you add another 0 on the end, now both of them are out to the thousandths position. We have 0.670 or 670 thousandths, and we have 678 thousandths. So now it's easier to see that this is our smaller number, and so we should have a less than in here. Let's take a look at the next one. So we've got 588 thousandths, or we have 59 hundredths. Well, I'm going to make this, I'm going to add a 0 to it, because 59 hundredths is the same thing as 590 thousandths. And now I just have to ask which is bigger, 588 or 590. Well, 590 is bigger, so we're going to eat that bigger number and put a less than symbol in there. All right, last one, maybe pause this video and try B on your own. All right, so hopefully you had a chance to try B. I'm going to add a 0 here, and 475 is less than 480, so that will also be a less than symbol. All right, rounding rules are the exact same as what we learned when we're rounding whole numbers. Remember, you're always looking to the digit to the right of the place value you're trying to round to. So we have 3 and 778 thousandths. We want to round it to the nearest hundredth. So I always like to underline the position I'm trying to round to. And then I know I'm looking at the place value to the right of that to figure out if I'm rounding up or down. So if I'm going to round this to the nearest hundredth, then I'm going to round up because that 8 is more than 5. It's 5 or more, let it soar. So we end up with 3.78 or 3 and 78 hundredths. All right, next one. It says to round to 3 decimal places. That means we want to round to 3 positions to the right of the decimal. So that's going to be right here in the thousandth position at this 3. Okay, so we're going to look to the right. That's a 5. So we're going up. We're going to round up. And so we get 0.824 or 824 thousandths.